Hey everyone, welcome to the Spark. Well, today I'm going to talk about podcast prospect pipeline, and I'm Tracy Hazzard. And hey, you want to take a look at the real live me? I hope you can see that and you see my avatar at the same time. I don't know, maybe this is just a little bit meta. I don't know about that. Maybe my, my millennial children are going to think this is really cool. Don't know. Anyway, we'll try it out. So welcome to the Spark. Welcome to the Inspire Classroom. I am Tracy Hazzard. I'm the CEO of Podetize, and Podetize is the largest post-production house of podcasts. And we have so many things that excite us about podcasting. But the main one that I'm going to talk about today is the podcast prospect pipeline. Because again and again from everyone that I hear from, all of you out there who are trying to build businesses, these are the things I hear again and again. You want to sell more? You want to fill more, right? You want to fill more events like this, live or virtual. You want to fill more masterminds, more webinars, more summits. You want to sell more coaching, consulting, courses, books, products. Like I hear this from you guys all the time. And from that, I also know that in order to do that, you got to get more. You got to get more fans, followers, subscribers, clients. Like this is an active part of what you have to do in the process of trying to sell more and trying to fill more, right? And in the process, we all sit back and we go, oh no, that means I got to do more, right? I got to do more emails. I got to make more posts. I've got to give more speeches. And for many of you out there who aren't doing this, though this is the key that I hear from clients again and again and again who are successful at filling their seats and doing that, they have to spend more on promos and ads. And so that frustrates me. I don't love the do more model, which is kind of funny because I'm going to admit something. My nickname as a child was Tracy Do. Yep, Tracy Do. And that was because my dad would say, here, let me do this for you. And I would go, no, Dad, Tracy Do. And so I'm a big doer, right? I'm one of those people who I can figure out the tech to anything. I can figure out how to do anything. And so I'm a big doer in this process. And yet I really don't want to do more. How about you? Yeah, I don't want to do more at all. So, but what we're really talking about here is sort of this idea of prospects and leads and all of these things combined. And many of you may be very familiar with something we call a funnel, right? A lead funnel. So where leads come in the top, they turn into prospects, then they turn into clients, customers, or purchasers. So they could be consumers. I'm going to use the terms interchangeably today. So just insert whichever one works for you. So if you're getting coaching clients, insert that. If your customers are buyers of a service or buyers of an info product, of course, they're your customers. And or if you're selling a product, they're consumers. If you're selling a book, they're readers, right? So like insert whatever name works for you. But the concept is the same. You got to get a bunch of people in the top of the funnel who you don't know yet. So they have to be new to you because you can only warm up the people you have so much, right? They've already bought, maybe they'll buy again or they'll buy the next thing from you, but there's only a certain percentage of that and only so many times you can go back to that to get them to take action. If you really want to sell more and you want to grow your business, then you got to get more leads into the top of the funnel, right? That's our only choice. So we want to move from leads to prospects to customers. Now, 10% conversion rate, I just did this here as a really easy math. Like this is, who wants to do math today, right? My kids are always joking with me. They go, Mom, it's the weekend. I don't do math when I ask them to calculate something. So, we don't want to do a lot of math here today. That's not what it's about. We're here to get excited about something else. And so, but I want to do something that really clearly defines this for you. So if you can do one customer a month, and let's say one customer for you is $100,000 and that makes your month awesome, right? Good for you, then maybe this model will work. But for most of us, we need more customers than that. We need 25, 50, 100, depending on where we are and what type of business we're in. So we need to calculate this backwards, right? How much money do we need to bring in each month to support our growth? And we want to start with how many customers does that mean? How many prospects do we need? How many leads? And we have to know our conversion rates on this. So most of us don't know our conversion rates, so we're guessing at this. I've given you 10% here, but I'm going to be really honest with all of you. 10% is too high. For most people out there testing and starting a funnel, very few people convert at that rate. I convert at a higher rate on certain types of things that I do and a much lower rate on other things. So when I'm trying to fill a course, I will have a much lower single-digit conversion. When I'm trying to sell, ironically, a consulting client, right, or when I'm trying to sell something like that, I have a much higher conversion rate. But my number of leads and prospects and customers is much lower as well. So the way that we reach them, and that's what I'm going to talk to you today about, creating that into a pipeline model instead of a funnel model here. So we're going to get into that. But the number one thing I want you to see here is that what you really have to do in essence is get more leads into the top, and they need to be new leads, because that's really the only way to make this work. And then once you have it working, obviously working on increasing your conversions and all of that really helps, because wouldn't it be great if you just converted 3 times higher on that? So our goal would be to get to 30% or better conversions on all of those. Now, here's the really bad news. 77% of your messages are never seen, heard, found out there. And by this, I mean messages on Facebook, messages on Twitter are much lower than that, Instagram, all of those places out there where you're social posting. Email is down in almost below, just around 11% for most companies right now in terms of conversion rate. For many, it's below that. For me, it's much higher. I have a 40% open rate, but I have a really small list that's very curated, and it's only my warm lead list. So you can get higher conversion rates and opening of your messages, but it's very rare. And so most of your messages out there are not getting seen, heard, or found. On top of that, social posts that are promotional of any kind do about 1.3% conversion rates. Really, really sad. If you turn that into an ad on Google, or a post on the first page of Google, you're more likely to get 13% conversion rates. So, there's where we're starting to move up in the world. But most of what we put out there, no one's ever reading, no one's ever watching, no one's ever listening to. So that's so depressing. We got to talk about ways to break the funnel and break what's going on there, so that we can have prospects instead of leads, right? Instead of leads, why do we even want them? Let's go straight to the prospect model. And that's what I want to do today, because if we're going to forget the funnel, go straight to those prospects, then we can do what I call building a prospect pipeline. So if we build this prospect pipeline, it's like a throughway, right? Now we can tee it off at the end. We can decide which pond to put our water of prospects, our flow of prospects into. We can decide where they go, and we can tee them off into 2 different ponds, one that we're going to warm up. Maybe it's like a pool, and we're going to heat it a little bit. We're going to get them excited about it. And the other, they're going to go right into our client pool, right? And so we're thinking about that, being off at the end. And that's what we're going to do with these. But everybody's right fit as we move them through the pipeline to begin with. They're not getting spit out along the way. So when we do this, we want to accelerate that flow, because that's what a pipeline does, right? When water starts flowing into it, it goes fast. So we want to do that, and we want to accelerate from prospects to profits. But sometimes we don't know who our prospects are. So I'm going to assume that most of you do, but I want to invite you that if you don't know, then there's a fast right fit experiment we can do with podcasting that can check that out for you. So I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes here. And those of you who are thinking that, well, I know exactly who I want. I know exactly who that customer, I know exactly who that right fit person is. That's great. We may also want to use this model as a way to use other people's audiences to get to them. So if you don't know who you're looking for, or if you do know who you're looking for, this might be a model that works for you. So it's called being a podcast guest. So Pat Flynn is known as the godfather of podcasting. I happen to be the queen, and John Lee Dumas is the king, but Pat Flynn has the trust of an amazing audience. And honestly, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be podcasting today. So he's responsible for making me a podcaster and building, and in a sense, building this entire business. I have to thank him for giving me the bug for this. So what he said on my show, and what we've talked about in person together, is that guest podcasting is the new guest blogging. So before, we wanted to be blogging with other people, like we wanted to exchange blogs. So it was its influencer model of exchanging. Not only was it building great search engine optimization and great what they call cross-linking and all of those things, but we were sharing audiences that had similarities to them. So if they weren't buying from me, but they were really interested in my subject, and you had an interest in the same audience, maybe they needed what you had, we complemented each other and our audiences would share that. So that's what's going on in podcasting. That's why everybody wants to be a podcast guest today. I hear it again and again. Every publicity firm is offering it as an option. But here's the thing, most of you and most of them are getting it wrong, and here's why. Here's my guesting tips for you. We want to find shows with the perfect audience fit. We want to pitch them personally. We want to give great value when we're on the show. And then the two real keys of what you can bring in terms of tremendous value for you and for the podcast host, so the audience and the audience there, is to share everywhere and reuse it everywhere. But let's talk about what those things look like real quick and figure out how you can find those right fit shows and how you can do all of this. So first, you got to become a podcast listener. You have to actually check out some shows. You want to see some shows, listen to some shows, and discover who their audience is, what the drivers are for the host, because they're doing it for a reason. And it comes through very apparent. What is their business model? Where do their interests lie? What's going on? If you listen, you'll be able to get to the heart of it really quickly. And if you're attuned to being sort of adaptive in what your messaging is, you'll be able to adapt your message and be perfectly right to pitch to that podcast. And know that when you go in front of them, that audience is going to be right for you as well. So pitch personally. This is one of my favorites. I was pitched by a company called Big Ass Fans. That's absolutely their name. And I was pitched with the best pitch I have ever received. And I've talked about this on stages before. But what happened was I was writing a column for Inc. magazine, and I was writing a lot about branding and awareness campaigns and how so many companies go wrong in their branding, and because they don't understand the audience. And so I got this email from someone who worked for the CEO of this company in Kentucky, and they said, hey, I've been reading your articles, and I know you talk about branding, and here in this particular article, you were talking about it this way. And I have a great story for you. I have the story of how my CEO turned down branding agency after branding agency, fired them because they wanted to change the name of the company, and it was a signal to him that they didn't understand his audience. And that was it. She left me hanging. I wanted to hear the story. So, of course, what did I do? I interviewed the CEO of the company, and he told me this fabulous story about how they used to be called HLVC fans, which sounds like, kind of technical and awful, but there's these giant fans that are in like stadiums around the world. And so contractors are his clients, these contractors who put these fans into these huge stadiums, and architects and designers who build these kinds of things, right? And so he used to answer the phones in the early days, and he would answer the phone, and he would say HLVC, and they would say, are you those guys with the big ass fans? And he would say, oh, yep, that's us. And so finally, he just changed the name and started answering the phone that way. And then that was it. They would get right into the conversation. So he decided that was the best name. Great story, right? Really interesting. And the branding lessons in that about truly deeply understanding your audience and what resonates with them was a great article. It was one of my best ones. And that happens because she understood exactly what my interest was and the value that I wanted to provide to my audience, and she gave me just that. And then she gave it to me in a brilliant way of just teasing me into it too. So when we were pitching, remember that it's not about you. It's about that host and that audience. And if we remember that first and foremost and stop sending our one sheets out with all about us and all about what we do, then we're going to be more successful about it. We want to be able to bring really good value. Really good value is binge-able. That's what I call it. Somebody wants to listen to the whole thing. They want to listen to more. They want to go consume more from you. It provides value. It ranks quickly. It educates and entertains. And it can be multimedia. It's more likely that it is because that will trap a larger audience. So we want to have that dynamicism of being multimedia in addition. What it's not is promotional, clickbait, advertorial, teasing without delivering, right? We want the story, we want the lesson, we want it all there in our content. And when we get it, we come back for more. That's the binge characteristic of it, right? Now, from there, remember, you have something to give in this process. It's not a, I'm great, so you should want me, because that's not the case. I have hundreds of guests I could choose from. I need something that's in it for me as the host, and sharing is your entry fee. If you have great capability of sharing to an audience, if you're good at sharing on Instagram, if you're good at sharing on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever it is, but you're good with that and you have a decent sized audience, that's a right fit match to my show, then I'm more likely to invite you on than I am someone who has a better resume. Why? Because there's something I'm going to get in that exchange, and that's exposure to other right fit audience members who might become listeners of my show. Because I'm not competing selling a book or a course or whatever it is that you're out there selling. I'm only commercing in my podcast, right? So now we want to talk about that last thing that I said, which your superpower could be reusing as well. Because remember, going back to what Pat Flynn said, guest blogging and guest podcasting being similar, if we create a page on our website where we put all those podcasts, and maybe we even turn it into an actual podcast of its own. Now we have a publicity podcast where anyone can come find us and come see. I'm inviting you to come see Tracy Lee Hazzard. It's spelled out there, TracyLeighazzard.com. If you go there, you'll see the example of what that looks like, right? Of what it looks like to have a getting interviewed podcast. That is everywhere that I've been out there interviewed. So I was interviewed on a show called Really Know Your Customer with Tony Bodo and Betsy Westhaper, and that's in my feed there. And anytime someone listens to it, they get credit. Like on the listener side, there's a listener for them that isn't their subscriber today. They may turn out to not like me as much as they like Tony and Betsy, and they decide to go listen to that show because that show's a right fit for them. So that's where my audience and their audience can start to cross over. So I'm doing them a benefit and giving them something better by reusing it in this way. But additionally, if I want to go on a stage and an event planner comes to my website and they go to this publicity page, they can very quickly listen to me, hear how engaging I am, maybe see some of the videos below that, be able to experience what's going on. And I'm more likely to then get something more out of that guest appearance than just going on that show and hoping that I'm going to sell some products or get some book sales going. So let's get back to that right fit prospect, because obviously that's the key, right? The key is to make sure that our audiences are absolutely right fit, because that's the best use of our time, but it's also the best value exchange in the whole process. So if I can find a podcast or start a podcast that has a model for getting those right fit prospects in the door to begin with, or in the pipeline to begin with, then I'm going to be doing better. And the best way to do that is to mind the gap, to really look at the narrow and specific places where I can find my niche within this. Now, this is different. There are lots of, I'm going to call it business consultants and advisors out there like, no, you need a shotgun, big, broad approach. Podcasting actually doesn't work like that. And modeling your client base or the prospect pipeline here needs to be narrow. Now, you can have different pipes, right? You can have, remember, a series of them for all different types of clients and customers. But get one working, make it work, make it convert for you, make it do its thing, then model that into the next niche and the next niche and the next niche. So thinking about that. The one key, though, to being not just narrow and specific with our search for an audience, but is also be definable and searchable. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about my podcast. It's called the Binge Factor. I'm going to use it as a model for you to understand how this works. You can go check out what I do on the website, thebingefactor.com. You can see our form that I fill in, that I'm inviting guests on, but it's a screening form. So you can check all of it out right there, okay? But what we're really doing with this is we're really checking out the whole process of, do I have a match to my audience along the way that's definable and searchable? So my audience on the Binge Factor, my ideal client. They're the same thing. but my guest is definitely my ideal client. So some of those ones in the audience might be the ones that would end up in the pipeline into that warm lead pool, right? In that warm prospect pool. So what I'm looking for is a very specific thing, but it's definable and searchable. So I can't go out there and look for the clients that are thinking about becoming podcasters. They don't put that on their LinkedIn title. They don't say aspiring podcaster. No, if they are a podcaster or they aren't a podcaster, that's a definable thing. So my pipeline works best because I can define that. I'm looking for an existing podcaster, and I define that even deeper because remember, I want to get narrow and specific about what makes my best customer, my most active, the one that makes me the most profitability, easiest to work with, like all of those definable things. I want to go through that list of them. And what I'm looking for is a podcaster that has 25 episodes or more, posts consistently every single week, because I know that they're going to become a really good client. And that's my minimum criteria right there. There's some other things that I do. I also want to know that they have a website, because a website's an indicator that they're not doing the podcast for just vanity purposes so that they can say, hey, I'm on Spotify. Like, they're doing it for purposes of business. And I work better with people who want to make money from their podcast, who want to poditize their show, right? So I work better in that. So that's the binge factor model. Now, what am I really looking for at the end of the day? I'm looking for people to binge on my show, right? Listeners. So if I interview successful podcasters on my show, then other podcasters who maybe aren't successful are going to listen to my show. So now I'm still working on two different groups of people, right? But the ones that I invite on my show, I know are perfect prospects for becoming clients. The ones that are listening, I can't really tell. They've got to warm themselves up. And how do they do that? They binge on my show. Here's the fact. Over the whole time of doing this, this is what we hear again. The shows that are considered bingeable, the ones where people sit down and consume all 25 episodes or 100 episodes, those are the ones that transact at a higher rate, have higher conversions, and do and faster close rates. Again and again and again, this is the factor that it comes into. Why is that? Well, if I'm binging on the show, I'm obviously getting some value as a listener on that, right? It must be valuable. It engaged me. I'm still listening. I'm learning something along the way. I'm also building tremendous trust in the host of this show, because they keep bringing me great content week after week after week, or for 100 episodes or whatever it is. But the additional part of being in my ear really helps as well, because they're hitting an emotional center for me. So that trust factor goes way, 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 way up really quickly. So that's really why we want to, when we're going and vetting shows to be on, that's what we want to listen for as well. So here, we want to increase that pipeline trust flow. That's our ultimate goal here, right? Because we want to turn those active prospects into profitable clients. And for profitable, that means you need to close them quickly. They need to stay with you, make money, refer lots of other people, right? Like, that's my definition of a profitable client. So a profitable client closes quickly, gets into action, starts building their success quickly in our process. They refer us to tons of other people. We have an 86% referral rate. So it's tremendous for us. And maybe it's 87%, something like that. Referral rate. So it's really high. So for every single person we bring in, we get about 2 to 3 on average referrals from them over the course of a year. So each client also, the longer they stay with us, and we have an average of over 2.25 years right now, and we've only been in business 4. So over 2.25 years is our average length that a customer stays with us. So now our lifetime value of that customer goes way up. So you can see why I want to get the perfect client match, because all of that flows, and you all know it's so much easier to sell more to your existing client base who already trust and love you than it is for you to go out there and find new people, right? So we want to build that trust pipeline, and we want to do it with that goal in mind of moving active prospects into profitable clients quickly. So how can we do that? And we want to do this whether we're guesting on a show or we're actively producing our own show. Now, remember, when we're producing our own show, we're way more in control of the prospects and the process. And that's really the critical factor here. If you want to turn this into a pipeline, you need to be the one who owns the pipe. So we're going to build a trust building pipeline where we bring in a valuable serve, caring for our audience. Caring for our audience is also caring for our guest in that process. We want to build integrity into the process and skills. These are the things, these are the foundation of trust. And we're going to accelerate that as quickly as possible through our pipeline. So the number one trust builder is to be audience value focused, to care about your audience, because if your guest is a right fit match for the audience and your audience is with you and binging on you, then everybody wins in that process. And this is my favorite quote from Dale Carnegie: you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. So the Binge Factor is not my first podcast. I've had 5 other podcasts, so I have 6 total. And the very first podcast we ever did was a podcast for 3D printing. And in that podcast for 3D printing, we didn't know who our audience was going to be. We didn't know a lot about it, but we wanted to learn more about the audience. Within 5 months, we had an audience of 25,000 people, and I had an email list of 0 people interested in 3D printing at the start of it. So we had a listenership of 25,000. Within a year, we had 100,000. Today, 600 episodes later, HP is our sponsor for the series and the show. So you can see how big trust built for us, and we became not only authorities in the industry, but aligned with a giant in the marketplace as well. So this all happened from us just being very, very curious and interested in caring about bringing value to our audience. So you've got to find the value to your audience. What is most valuable to them? So going back to the Binge Factor model, because I said I'm going to keep giving this model to you so you can understand how it works. So what's most valuable to existing podcasters? The number one thing I hear again and again and again, and I hear it by interviewing them on my show, it's reiterated all the time, is the thing they're the weakest in is how to increase listeners. And they believe that getting more publicity is equated to getting more listeners. They believe that more publicity and more listeners go hand in hand. So they hire a lot of PR firms to get them guesting spots. They do whatever they can to get more publicity, to get their show mentioned out there. So this is a driver for them. They want this. It's easy for me to tap into this, and I can bring great value here. Here's how I do it. I put in a pipeline, and my pipeline looks like this. I give them a podcast interview, which they know is valuable because I have an audience, and they know that they're going to get listened to by somebody who's interested in podcasts. That works really well for them. From there, I take it and turn it into an Authority Magazine article. In that Authority Magazine article, I then take it and turn it into a Thrive Global article. So now they're getting publicity and articles out there, which is different than just doing more podcast interviews. Then the last thing I can give them is a BuzzFeed tip mention, where their show's mentioned and a tip that they give is mentioned, so they can say they were featured in BuzzFeed. And everyone thinks that's the mecca of podcast listeners because the age demographic and all the match for BuzzFeed and podcasting is very similar. So they think that that's the perfect match for them, and that's what they really want at the end of the day. So I'm bringing them along this process. Now, remember I said that my perfect podcast host, the perfect one to be a guest on my show, is a podcast host that has 25 episodes or more, posts every single week, and doing all that. In the process of trying to get publicity, another time at which they try to get publicity is when they first start their show. So there are lots of people that reach out to me and say, I don't meet your criteria. I just launched my show, but would you have me on? So now I have a whole bunch of people who are just starting out in the process who might make perfect, and I am having a computer, my computer is, I think it just wasn't plugged in properly. Sorry guys, I almost lost you there. Anyway, so they might be perfect clients. They might actually be ready to be clients already. It's my assumption that my active and perfect client, and the one I'm going to spend time doing a 1 hour with as the CEO of the company. Remember, I have 60 employees. I have a sales team, like the whole process. So I don't need to do these calls, but I can do them as a pipeline because they raise awareness and bring us these other people along the way, right? And so that's important as well. So I want to do that. So I have a broader give that I brought into the process. It's called Giving Tuesday Podcast. It's coming up. You'll see it on the Binge Factor website, but it allows me to mention 5 brand new shows that have not been mentioned yet, that are just starting out, and it gives me a place to put them. And it gives me a give back to them, and it gets them into my system and invites them into my email list and my whole process so they can get more. And in that, they love that give, and it makes them feel nurtured and loved, and they easily flow into my warm prospect pool right from there. So that's another thing. You want to find a way to put out the people who are not quite ready for you yet, but are so eager to meet with you and talk with you. Our number 2 pipeline builder is to serve consistently and constantly, because remember, our number 2 item for trust building is integrity. And the best way to show integrity is to show up for people, right? To be there when they need you, to let them know that you're there, to serve them consistently and constantly. So how do we do that in the podcast world? Well, this part's the easy part, because this part is a system. Right? There's syndication involved in podcasting that helps us through this whole process. So if we're going to serve and syndicate, and we're going to do a show every single week, we need to consistently push it out. Well, if we push it out in video, audio, blog, and social share, we can do a whole entire week's worth of content, a whole entire week's worth of things with only doing one thing, recording one thing at the beginning of the day. So our done for you model is to record, upload, and you're done, and we'll take care of everything else in that process, including the syndication, which is the key, because if we syndicate you out, this is a whole lot easier than you figuring out that you have to go post on LinkedIn, you have to go post on Instagram, you have to post up here. If we syndicate you, we put you on all of these platforms at once. So a syndication model is you're hosted in one single place. In this case, it's Poditize, and then from there you're on iHeart, you're on Amazon Alexa, you're on Roku, you're on Pod24, you're in all of these different places: Google Play, Google Podcasts, Apple TV. Everywhere you might want to be already, and you don't have to do the work on that. So that's really valuable. The one other thing you might want to consider, though, is starting live, because if you do a Facebook Live, a YouTube Live, a LinkedIn Live, if you're able to do it, an IGTV, any of those models, or you restream your content live, which you can do as well using certain third-party apps, you get engagement in that process, and that engagement can help you find your next guest, your next person. It can help you warm up those prospects that are in the warm-up pool a little faster, because the engagement invites that faster close rate. So that's something you can also do in the process. About 50% right now of our clients, and it used to be like down at 30 last year. This year it's really accelerated up to almost half of our clients are doing video first. The key to, though, what we're doing on the opposite side of that is making sure that you're found. Because we have to go back to that guest blogging model, right? We have to go back to that place where Google controls the keys to the castle. And if you haven't been watching the news lately, they're in antitrust hot water because of it right now. But the reality is Google is 90% of the search engine. YouTube is the 4th largest search engine. They used to be the 3rd. I don't know. Somehow they've dropped, I think, recently into the 4th position. But those two things are huge in the scope of being found, right? If we want to be where people are searching for us, and we should be, if we're providing a great, valuable service and people don't know that we're out there, shame on us. We need to make sure that that's working for us. So being found and being seen are really key. Part of that is that we have to go back to that blogging model again. So we need to take what we've done, because the verbal podcast is not translated into something that Google can search and find and utilize. They're still working on, although it's coming, and I'll talk about that in one second, but they're still working on an old school model of how people type in and search for things, right? And so we need to have a blog post. 3,000 plus words is the optimum size for a blog post. If someone told you, oh, just write a 400 to 600 blog post, that's old school. That's like almost 10 years old now. It doesn't work. It needs to be 3,000 plus words. It has to be a minimum of once a week. And if you're going to go for the advanced model, what I do, you also need to seed out articles in other places, like I do at Authority Magazine or at Thrive Global Inc. Magazine, like all out there, so that they also come back and lead to you as well. The other thing that you need to know in this process is that WordPress is the #1 platform. If you try to do anything else for your like Squarespace, Wix, hard-coded websites, they do not work as well. They do not play well with Google. Google just doesn't bother because there's such a small percentage. WordPress, again, they have a monopoly on the marketplace. And so Google only needs to get to the good websites in their minds. They need to be a WordPress website. If you have any problems or any issues with that, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you further about that. And then YouTube, you need to have a YouTube channel. Why? Because Google owns YouTube. So let's talk quickly about Alexa, because verbal SEO is coming into play. This is what we tapped into when we first started our podcast. So I can go, hey, Alexa, play the Binge Factor podcast, and she does it. Right? So today, our next generation, my girls have Alexa dots in their room. Alexa tells them bedtime stories sometimes. We can make room announcements. They know how to interact with her. They know how to ask her to get what they want. My youngest daughter is 6. She's learning how to read in 1st grade right now. She can't type in things yet into the search engine because she doesn't spell really well, but she can get Alexa to do whatever she wants. And she knows that. So she will first go to Alexa to find out how big is an elephant. And so there's all kinds of crazy stuff that I always see there. So our children, our next generation is highly attuned to verbal patterning search. So Google, Amazon, Siri, Apple out there, they're all gearing towards this verbal patterning recognition, which is why we don't write blog posts. We transcribe and then write them. And we leave in what you say and the way you say it, because it's highly valuable as we move forward into the world, into this new AI bot-controlled world. So our #3 trust builder is to show, don't tell your skills. Because remember, we were talking about valuably serving, right? Caring about your audience, having integrity, and you got to show some skills. You got to have some skills. But I don't want you to tell, and I definitely don't want you to one-sheet yell your skills, right? We don't need your resume. We don't need any of those things. That's not how an audience is going to build trust. They want to see that you are out there doing this, that you have capability, that you are becoming that voice of authority in the marketplace. It's okay if you're not there yet. They'll see your journey and say, I'm going to trust that. I'm going to say, when you're honest with me that you're not the expert, you're curious about things, like we were in the 3D print world, that was okay. That was allowed, and that became still a level of authority in the industry, and it gave us a boost up. So this is a great way for you if you're in a growth business model. So I want to talk about a show that has the perfect model of this. So the Charisma Quotient from Kim Seltzer, one of my favorite shows. She's a great host, super dynamic, just absolutely amazing. She is brilliant in how she runs her show, and she's been doing this over 5 years. So she's definitely got the model down. It's been working for her. She uses it like a pipeline, and that's what I want you to recognize and understand. But she also understands that authority building piece, and she understands that content building piece. So she understands all the pieces of what needs to happen for her to really build this as a great platform business builder for her and business growth trajectory, so that she continues to grow her client base over time. So here's how she does it. She does 3 episodes a week. The first one is 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the topic. Like if it's a really serious time and everybody needs some serious help, she's a relationship coach. So, you know, COVID has brought some incredibly difficult times for her clients, and she needs to talk with them about it. It might be a longer episode. But what she does is she picks a topic, super niche, super detailed, highly searchable though. It's searching at a pain point and how she can, and she's going to talk about solving the problem. But really, she's talking about the pain in the process there. So that is really one of those things where she is getting to a model of creating content for the website that is becoming highly valuable so she can be found. She's got her let's get found done. The second thing that she does, though, is she also does an interview with another relationship coach or someone out there in the marketplace, maybe somebody who's providing services that she doesn't provide, like post-divorce counseling, even though she might help you get ready and confident into the next level of ready when you're ready to date again, but maybe she doesn't help in that traumatic transfer or something like that. So she might bring someone in. But here's what she does, and I want you to listen to that show very carefully. She controls the narrative from the moment she starts. She controls what's going on and sets the tone and the topic for what the two of them. So essentially, they're sitting there like a panel discussing a topic, not like her interviewing them to let them sell stuff on her show. Now, if in the process, some of her clients align with that person and it works out for her, or some of her listeners, she's happy that that's happening. But what she's doing is she's raising her authority in the marketplace and in the niche of the area, but she's also carefully aligning herself side by side as an equal and actually as slightly above, because the host is always more valuable than the guest, right? Oprah is more popular than any celebrity she's ever introduced on her show. So she controls the audience. That's where the value lies. So that's her 2 shows. The 3rd show of the week is really where she shows how she works, because a relationship coach is kind of an intangible, right? Am I going to have success? Am I going to not have success? Of course, I need to trust Kimmy. I'm developing that trust along the way. As I'm listening to her show, I'm getting to know her. She's in my ear. She's really helping me. But is it really going to be valuable to me? Am I going to get something out of plunking down money to work with her? Like, that's a question many people have. It's an objection in the sales process. And so what she does is she offers up an opportunity to apply to and have a free coaching on air with her. So now, of course, you have to be willing to go on air, right? Like, so that's, I may not want to air all the stuff about it, but she makes that a requirement in the process because she's giving you her time for free. And so a half-hour call is what it ends up being, that is then aired as the podcast. The listeners are getting a demo of watching the model of someone who's maybe carefully aligned with where their problem is, and seeing the solutions she's offering and the way that she's working with them, and seeing the success potential for the advice that she's giving and how that's working in the process. Really successful model. But here's the thing that she tells us when I interviewed her on my show. She said that 9 out of 10 of the people who come on the show as an on-air coaching client loves it so much, enjoyed the 30 minutes with her, and felt like they got value that they were able to put into action immediately and get success from, that they then come and become a client of hers. Now, sometimes they go into the group coaching because maybe they just don't have quite the bigger funds to be a consulting client. But most of them come and consume something else and buy something else in some way, shape, or form. Now, the 1 out of the 10 that doesn't, you know what they do? They refer someone else who can pay. So they maybe can't afford it or whatever it is, but they end up referring. So what happens in this process is she gets 100% kick-in from the law of reciprocity that says, if I give to you for this 30 minutes of my time, you achieve value, you're going to give back to me in some way, shape, or form. And maybe they're giving back in the form of becoming clients, or they're giving back in the form of becoming referrals. We see the same thing in the process of what we do. So this is why this model is very, very brilliant. So let's take a look, though, at the follow-up on that process. So if I'm going to do all of these things, right? I'm going to have this pipeline of bringing guests in, and I'm going to, they're the right fit for me, and I'm going to do all of that. But how do I then demo my process? So for me, for the binge factor, I have to demo my services, because what I want them to do is become my clients. So if they are my clients, I need to demo all the amazing things they can get from me. I have 60 employees that do video, audio, blog, social share graphics, write emails, do the whole thing. So I've got to demo great practices of follow-up and service so that they see and feel and receive what we do every day. And sometimes I get people who have no idea that I'm the CEO of Podetize. They come on the Binge Factor. That's all that they know, is that I'm the host of the Binge Factor. And after the second or third email, when some of these graphics and other things are coming out to them, they look at me and they send me an email and they go, who is your producer? Who does all of this for you? And can I have an appointment with them? Can you refer them to me? And I'd be like, yeah, let me have my team get back to you. They close and they're clients instantly. So even when they don't realize that that's what they're coming into, or that's who I am, they still receive on the other end so much that they're like, they feel inadequate in what they're producing and wanting to next level up to match up to me. So the competitiveness kicks in as well. Here's just some of the things that we produce for them in the process. They're going to get 7+ emails in the process. So because it takes very long time for me to get BuzzFeed to pick up the tips, I tell people at the very beginning when they sign in to become a guest on my show that they need to keep my emails. They can't unsubscribe from them. And I promise not to over email them, but they can't unsubscribe from them because they won't get that notification, because BuzzFeed could come 6 months down the road. They all stay subscribed. Now, I'm careful and I never send any of my broadcast messages or any of my salesy type messages to them. They have a carefully crafted way that I only email them no more than once a week. But for the most part, at the beginning of the process, it'll take about 7 to 10 emails before they'll become clients anyway. So like it's always happens early in the process, and then they're happy to receive the remainder after that as clients. They move into a different list. But the emails are carefully worded. Their emails are sharing. They're giving them tips on how to get more out of their guest appearance. A lot of them will take my emails that I send and now start modeling it and use the templated words. I get emails back saying, do you mind if I copy your emails? And I'm like, no, go right ahead. It's exactly what I would have given you if you were my client. And they said, really? You give that to your client? I was like, not only do I give it to my client, I send it for them. We do it for them. Oh, can I have a conversation with your sales team, right? So we're building in the process of showing them they have a problem with how they write emails, and now we have a solution for them. The next one I do is ego-bait graphics. I'm going to show you what these look like. These are typically these style of graphics and everything. They're some of them are go along with the post. Some of them are infographics, what we call infographics that we share on mostly on Instagram, but also on Pinterest, and they do really well there. We have a long version, which didn't work so well in the slide format here, but the long version surprisingly does extremely well on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. They're getting a lot of traction. People are stopping on them and reading them. You can tell by the engagement model of how they're viewing them and then what they do afterwards. So those are really valuable. Infographics are really valuable to people. And then we do quotes and other things. Now, an ego bait is what is here. So instead of, remember that quote that I showed you before that Pat Flynn said, guest podcasting is the new guest blogging, that's a quote from him in the show. What I found over time is that if I send that, they won't share it. Why? Because it's like they're quoting themselves. Like we only provide inspirational quotes from other people in our feed. They just feel uncomfortable about sharing that. Some people don't. Some people that's like ego and they love that. But in this case, this is a different type of ego play. I'm saying something that sounds a bit testimonial-like, but it's actually something I said on the show, but it's describing why Pat is an expert. So in this case, Pat Flynn is one of the best teachers, not just for podcasting, but for creating a whole digital business. This is what he wants in the world. I know this because I understood him when he came on my show. What he wants is to be known for building digital businesses, not just being the godfather of podcasting. So I already tapped into something that he wants to be recognized for. I've given it to him here in what I said on the show, and I'm able to quote it here. He is not only going to put this on his social posts, he's going to push it out, he's going to put this on his press page on his website. That's the ultimate goal, which is why we go back here to making sure we have our web embed codes. Now that's something unique to us. We send in all our follow-up emails, but we give them the code to embed it in their website with the graphic included so it looks gorgeous on their press page. And if they don't know how to use it, we have an invitation, we have a video on how to do it. No, we have an invitation to have a call with a customer service member of our team so that you can do it right. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's extremely valuable to me as a host to have those cross links working from some person's website to my website, a speaker to my website, a famous author to my website. Like those things are very, very valuable. So we want to make them happen. And so the value of my spending time on it is worth the marketing dollars we put into at the beginning. But on the flip side of it, that's also an opportunity to say, yeah, this is what we do for our clients. This is automatically a part. It's built into our model. We send this out. We give you the web embed code. We give you all these details. And on your behalf, we will help them do it. You never have to have this tech call with them, which I'm sure you don't want to do. From there, the last piece of what we do is I invite them into my exclusive client group. And they know they're in my exclusive client group. And the thing about my client group is every week we do live coaching. We do it at noon on Wednesdays, noon Pacific time, and we do a live coaching call. And there's always a topic of some great interest about various micro subjects that we do. We turn that into a podcast called Feed Your Brand so people can connect it up with it and get it out there. But it's turned into Feed Your Brand like months later because we have so much content, right? So if you're my client, you're getting this information on the podcast industry, what's happening, how to be successful. You're getting that right away. And then you have an ability for 40 minutes, 45 minutes to ask questions of us. And so this is a huge benefit. I mean, my clients pay money for this. And as a guest, you can come into this. Now, why do I do it? Because those guests are high profile, successful podcasters, and they might have some great ideas. So the dynamic of the group raises the level of it. Secondly, if they're in that group, I can tell you that what they hear from my clients again and again and again, and it's not an invitation because this is a closed client group. There's people raving and commenting and thanking us for our services happen within the group. So if they do take me up on that invite, that's the final. They will become a client. There is no question. They don't get that from their host out there. So there's no question in their mind they'll become a client because they can become a client for as low as $49 a month. So that for them and still get the benefit of this. So they will not be a problem within it. If they sell within that group though, if they try to do any type of sales, they will be kicked out. That is our only rule in the group. They can ask any other questions. They can build their business. They can grow from there. So, I realized I didn't show you guys one of these great infographics. See how brilliant they are? We're branding their themselves, their podcast show. We're giving great tips out of here. We're aligning them with me. Like the whole thing is working really well. And what that is really doing at the end of the day is it's building this pipeline and platform at the same time. That's where we derive tremendous amount of value. Is not only are we getting great clients, the perfect clients, right? The ideal active clients in, but we're building a platform of information, content that's going to seek out and be easily found for those out there who are those aspiring ones, the ones that we couldn't define, that we couldn't reach, that we couldn't bring in as leads and prospects, right? That we couldn't even get to the pipeline to begin with. But now we built up that as well at the same exact time by doing the same exact thing. What I tell my clients is record, upload, done. They don't have to do anything else. But what we do at the very beginning is all of this that we've been talking about today is making sure that we have our prospect pipeline absolutely defined so that the strategy is in place to build business for us, and so that the outcome is that works for us, that the platform works for us, that all of it is in line, really creating that high speed flow through our pipeline. So do you want to check out and take a look at what those mean in terms of profitability? So I'm going to share with you my stats, my prospect pipeline profits. Let's take a look at what we do. So we have 24 prospects. We have more, obviously, who come in through the process of applications. I probably get 20 applications a day. So like there's tons more that come through the process in that, but we weed through them. We do filter them into our sales model. So they go into other type of cold lead traffic stuff that we do, but they are slightly warmed up because they sought us out. So there's a little bit difference there, but I'm not talking about them. I'm talking to the ones who actually end up on my show, the ones who become those like contact prospects, right? So think of it like the ones you might have a sales call with, right? So they're already qualified in, they're prospects, not just leads. I have 24 of them. I have 4 that will become the solo interviews over the course of the month. I have 20 that get into the binge factor special messaging that we call the Giving Tuesday podcast. They will get the special mention there. They're also in this model. Now, I spend about 8 hours a month on this. So I spend 4 hours doing the interviews. I spend about a half hour a week doing the ones for the Giving Tuesday podcast. So I spend a couple hours on that. And then I spend a couple of hours seeking out and vetting the list with my team. So my team gives me the list of who they are going to send out messages to, inviting them to come in and be guests on the Binge Factor. But I look at that and do some of that myself. And certain people on the list, like I've had Wall Street Journal podcasters on my show. They may never become clients, but I will occasionally bring one of those in, because the high profile of them, even though the Wall Street Journal controls how their podcast goes out, they're not going to become a client. Although you never know. That's how we got in with Hearst Publications. So Esquire, Elle Magazine, Most Useful Podcast Ever, Popular Mechanics became our clients because of that model. So it could bring you a lot more than you ever realized. So sometimes those are valuable too. But the association, so every so often I throw one of those in. So from there, I'll spend about 8 hours a month. That's it. That's my time, thinking about the value of that time, right? So from there, I just put a 30% close for our numbers here. I'm probably closer to an 75 to 80% close. Like, we have a much higher close rate. So, but that has to do with a whole bunch of other factors and not just the podcast portion itself. So I'm only giving you probably what is the direct relationship of my having said something, them having received an email. But we have a lot more interaction because of the coaching group and the other things that I told you about, right? So those prospects turn into 8 clients. Those 8 clients have an average lifetime value for our company of $15,000. And if you look at that overall, we come to about $120,000. That doesn't take into account the number of people the others refer us to. We are at an 86% referral rate. I was right about that. 86% referral rate. So those now become, for every 8 people, we will get 2 to 3 more per person that then become clients within months of them working with us. So the value is adding up over time. And this is the growth path. We have not spent any money in advertising for our business. And we have gone from 12 clients to 503 clients. This is actually a little old. We have more. And we went through almost all of that from both using the pipeline, from the referrals of our existing client base, and from me giving a few speeches here and there. But most of that led to all the other things anyway. So that's how that works for us. And we've gone to over $1 million in sales that way. And we're now set to 10x that for the next year. So we're really on a fast growth path. And this is how we did this through our platform and our process. So I'm ready for questions, ready for anything that you might have. Hope that you're really considering that this podcast pipeline may be the best answer, especially in today's world where we're having so much difficulty really getting our time managed well. So if we go into something that we know is going to go right for the best opportunity for business, isn't that the best use of our time? So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. It's cool to do this very interesting model of speeches here. So you're getting my avatar and me at the same time. But if anyone has any questions, you can type in the chat, raise your hand, whatever that is. Happy to answer that in like 1 minute I have left before the next event is going to happen. And I'm sure there'll be an announcement somewhere about where that is on the campus. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Spark. Appreciate this fun, exciting, and interactive way to have a talk and to inspire others.